My project was a rotating drink holder. This can be used for anything, but the design is based on holding alcohol bottles. The copper is going to be used as a trim on the interior corners. The rotating plate has a diameter of 20 inches, and it's going to be split into 4 parts by acrylic. This will allow for it to hold handles, or a couple smaller bottles with shot glasses next to them. The walls are 12 inches tall, which may result in the tops of some bottles peeking over the top, but it'll be tall enough for most of the bottles, and I want to keep the design as small as possible. Raising the walls too much might have made the design a bit too large for my liking. My inspiration for this project was a lack of organization at my house. We had a tiny cabinet for our alcohol, but it couldn't hold more than a couple bottles, so most of it ended up on the windowsill. Having a central location for these would make the house look more clean and make everyone feel like a bit less of an alcoholic and more of an alcohol connoisseur with a fancy rotating table. I used the vertical bandsaw to cut the wood and acrylic portions of the project. I was a bit nervous about doing this as I'd only cut straight through a piece of metal on the machine shop saw, so I didn't have that much experience. Cutting a smooth circle was definitely a challenge for me, but I had some sandings to do afterwards anyway, so I figured I'd use a sanding to make my cuts a little bit cleaner. To make the table rotate, I bought some ball bearings off of Amazon that should stick right onto the wood. Keeping the table from sliding while rotating is a bit tricky though. The option I went with was having the rotating plate overhang a bit and have it contact the base plate. This way when I spin it, it won't be moving laterally, only rotating. There are two main factors that made this project work not quite as well as I had hoped. One being that the bearings were cheap and they worked like cheap bearings. When I held one in my hand and applied a reasonable amount of force to it, I could feel the amount of friction skyrocketing. Applying some loop to the ball bearings or buying some slightly higher quality ones would have made it rotate smoother. The second reason is my design. The friction between the overhang and the wall of the base plate was fairly large. One way to fix this would be to put the ball bearings I used for the bottom onto the inside of the overhang. This will mean that the bearings are in contact with the wood of the base plate, rather than the base plate would be in contact with the rotating plate wood. This doesn't take any significant design changes, and it should work fairly well. The main change I would need to make is thickening the overhang and the base plate so that the bearings will be able to fit on them. It takes a bit more force than I'd like it to, but the table still rotates and I can use it in my house.